Okay. Hi. Can you
Hello,
hear me?
brother. Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
What's up, sir? How you doing?
It's an early Australian morning, and I saw
What'd you
the
say?
link to this stream. It's an early Australian
What did you say?
morning.
I didn't get you. Oh, you're in Australia. That's
Australia.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
I saw
This
the
is no.
link
This is
to
not.
this. Hmm?
Sorry. Let me reply to this comment. This is not my guest. My guest is still coming. He just joined.
No
How
worries.
you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I just saw the link to the stream on Dots Connected to Islam channel.
Oh,
So, yeah.
Rob. They said you're
That
banned on Dots Connected to Islam. Why is that?
beats
Huh?
me,
Are
man.
you a bad?
I've had
You a bad boy?
apparently I'm a bad boy.
Apparently, you're a bad boy.
Yeah.
My mod says he mods for Fawad. Share this with him. Anyways, what you have for us, man? You've not been a bad boy to me, so I'll treat you like a good boy until you become a bad boy. How's that?
Oh, okay. Challenge accepted.
No, it's not a challenge, bro.
Uh,
1 second. Let me just put this on my. Okay, so let's go. What do you have?
well, I'm a Christian. I've been reading through the Quran on my channel, and I'm up to Surah 25. Um,
Okay.
so far, I have no reason to believe in Islam based on what I've read in those particular surahs. Um, I
Mm,
don't know how much or how long you've been a Muslim. I'm only just meeting you now, or how much of the Quran you've read, but that's basically it in a
okay.
nutshell.
So, do you have any specific questions? Like, is there anything you want to talk about?
It's up to you, man. Like, I mean,
Okay, so you're a Christian, right?
yeah.
Why are you?
Because I've
What
I've read
is?
I've read the 25 chapters, so I could literally touch on any of those chapters.
Why not tell me about Christ? Tell me about Christ. I think that's a good place to start. What do you think?
Yeah. So obviously, Orthodox Christian, I believe, Nicene
You're
Creed.
Orthodox.
Well, Orthodox faith in the sense Orthodox Creed, so like Nicene Creed, Athanasian Creed. So I
Okay.
believe he's both God and man. I believe he's the Messiah. I believe he was crucified. My questions though in regards to the Quran is that I'm interested to see what the Quran says about these particular biblical characters, like how they behaved, what they spoke, and that's my question for all Muslims. Why does the Quran lay out, um, say in this case, the Jesus of the Quran is completely different to the Jesus of the New Testament, but it's a Jesus that is no different to any of the what Christians would call a heterodox version of, say, the Gnostics, the Docetists, the Ebionites, those uh, small like minority groups that had a peculiar view of
Rob,
Jesus.
can you see this?
Yes,
So
I
I don't know
can. Yeah,
why they say
yeah.
why they say these things about you, bro. I mean,
I don't know. I don't know, man.
I'm
Honestly, I don't know.
look, I'm gonna treat you good, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like, let's just ask something like tangible, something very, like I don't want to go. You were saying a lot of stuff.
Oh,
Focus on one thing
okay.
and
So for example,
yeah,
let's stick to a surah. So for example, say Surah 19 is probably the
Surah
most
19,
fascinating one.
Surah Maryam.
Yeah,
Okay, so what happened there?
right. So in Surah 19, we have Mary being um let me just quickly go there. And I'm honestly interested in your perspective on this.
No problem, man.
Let's go
That's why
to
we're here.
say let's start with verse 2, ayah 2. So remembrance of the mercy of your
Okay.
Lord to his servant Zechariah, when he called out in
Okay.
secret, he said, My Lord. This is basically Zechariah with respect to John the Baptist, that he's going to be born and so on. Then you come down to verse 16. And remember the
Okay.
book Mary, when she withdrew from her family to an eastern place and took a veil apart
Didn't
from
get
them,
that.
we sent to her our spirit, took for her the form of a human being exactly. She said, Surely I have refuge with the merciful from you, if you are one who guards yourself. He said, I'm only a messenger of your Lord, sent to grant you a boy who is pure. And then obviously we know that's
Mm-hmm.
Jesus. Okay, just for the sake of interest, what's your run down? Give your tafsir, like run down through these verses to me. Like, what does it mean that she withdrew from her family to an eastern place? What's this eastern place? Why does she presume that something bad will happen to her when there's a veil, like she veils herself in this eastern place, and then there's this human form, this being that appears to her, and she thinks something bad will happen, and it breaks down to her shaking a date palm in verse 25. Like this voice is speaking to her. Is it the angel talking? Is it Jesus? Like, give me your historical breakdown about this.
You know what we're gonna do, Rob? Rob.
Yes.
You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna open what's it called? A tafsir. I have tafsir study, so
Yep.
we'll open it together and see.
Go
Right?
for it.
Is that
Go
cool?
for it. Yeah. Go for it.
All right. Let me see how I can share the screen. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Um. Let me see how I can share the screen. Mm, share screen. One second. Hmm. What?
Why is Mr. Doctor saying, Rob, I want to box you?
Mr. Doctor is my number one mod, bro. So he's really
Yeah,
defensive. I
your
don't
number
know.
one mod wants to have a boxing match. I don't think that would fare very well for you, Mr. Doctor. I'm too nice. Um,
Oh my god. I don't know why this. Okay, hold on. Right.
it's okay. By the way, if your internet's bad, I can just like if you put the link in the private chat,
What?
I'll just open. If your internet is bad and you can't share,
No, it is sharing. I think we have it now, right?
oh, okay, yep. Is this from the study
Yeah.
Quran
So
or like what? What's
Tafsir Sadi. Tafsir Sadi. He was Mufassir. He
okay?
in a couple hundred. Yeah. So this is what he says. We're
Hmm.
starting from what? Okay. So here, this is where you were talking about, right? Can you see my
Yep,
mouse?
yep, yep.
Okay. So Asadi, he says, having mentioned the story of Zakaria and Yahya and its wondrous signs, Allah now tells us a story that is even more wondrous, moving on to that which is lesser, to that which is more sublime. Recount, O Muhammad, in the story of Maryam, peace be upon her, that this is one of her greatest virtues that she is mentioned in the holy book, which is from the Muslims. This is Asadi speaking now. From the east to the
Hmm.
west, recites. Okay. And her good conduct when she withdrew, that is, she moved away from her family towards the east, that is, to the east of where they were. She screened herself from them, that is, she put a barrier between her and herself. The reason why she went away from them and screened herself was in order to withdraw and be alone in worship with her Lord, with humility and sincerity towards Him. I think you got your answer right there, right? From Asadi. She withdrew
Okay,
herself to worship,
so
to get closer to Allah.
but I find it interesting that other tafsir like Ibn Abbas, Ibn Kathir, they'll
What?
speak about.
What tafsir?
So other tafsir narrators like Ibn Kathir, Ibn Abbas, Jalalain.
Ibn Abbas doesn't have a tafsir, bro. So that's
Uh,
Ibn Abbas didn't.
no.
I have tafsir Ibn
Quran.
Kathir as well. You want me to bring that up?
If I go Quran X,
Say, what do you
the
think?
website, yeah.
What did you say they said?
Well, apparently it's to do with she's having menses. So
She's having menses.
yeah,
Is that
she's
what
having.
it says in tafsir Ibn Kathir? Hey guys, our
Uh,
guest is here. Our guest is here.
let me just show it to you here.
Okay. Welcome. Our guest is here, guys. So get ready. He's really Hollywood, guys. So don't act weird. Just be calm. Assalamu alaikum, ya Sheikh.
Walaikum
How are you,
salam wa
sir?
barakatuh. I'm good. I'm good, brother.
How you doing, man?
I'm good. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time, man. How's everything?
Well, good. Everything is fine. So
All
I
right.
think,
So
I think I'll just. I'm not yet
that's
settled. I'll join you in the next.
okay.
Yes, I want my camera in the next maybe few minutes.
All right, then I'll just mute you.
Oh,
Just say something in the chat if you want me to unmute you. All right. All right. So Rob, what were you saying?
Okay, so who is Tanwir al-Mikbas min Tafsir Ibn Abbas? Who is this particular individual?
I think that's not the name of an individual.
Well, according to I'll put it in the private chat.
Okay, let me see. Tanwir al-Mikbas min Tafsir Ibn Abbas. Where did you get this from?
This is a Muslim website. This is like what is this? Is this one particular individual that
Abbas
never heard
doesn't
of
have a
before?
tafsir, bro. That's known. Ibn Abbas did not write a tafsir. You know?
Yeah. So okay, what's your? Here's the link.
This is Wikipedia, bro.
Is a book of tafsir comprising exegesis interpreted of the Quran. The book contains narrations of disputed authenticity which are attributed to the 7th century Islamic scholar and Sahabi Ibn Abbas.
Yeah. So this book, this was authored by some guy. His name was Firuz Abadi. Look, Ibn Abbas made commentary on some verses, like when he was asked about some verses, because he was very knowledgeable on the Quran. He's a companion of the Prophet Muhammad. Well, he didn't write the tafsir. So anything you have is like someone compiling, what's it called? Compiling his words, his sayings. But anyways, what does it say? Let's say it's authentic.
Well,
Let's just say it's authentic.
So
She chosen
apparently
seclusion from them.
she purifies herself. I mean, according to him, she purifies herself
What?
after the end of her menses.
After
And
the end of her
then
menses, then we sent
and
unto her
then
our spirit.
yeah, Gabriel, when she had finished purifying herself, and had assumed for her the likeness of a perfect man. Now, the question though, based on the tafsir you just laid out, where is this eastern place, and what sort of veil is this? Like, so they try to explain the veiling as being she's going through her purification process, but purification with respect to what? Like,
Listen, Rob. The Tafsir Sadi says one thing, and this what you brought says another thing, right? And both of them are, how do I say? They are speaking from, how do I say? They are doing ijtihad. They are, what's the word for this? They're not evidence, any textual evidence, right? As far as I know. So this is like different opinions of what's happened. Do you understand?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's why
So
that's why I'm asking. That's why I'm asking the very specific question: why does the Quran use language like eastern place? Eastern with respect to what location? Where was she before?
with respect to their location, where she was,
Yeah, but what was that location?
it says east. So it's not something that is relevant. You know, Allah says she withdrew to the east, so she withdrew to the east, and she screened herself from Yani them, her family, and the angel came to her. You know
Yeah, but why? Like, okay, like in Surah
why?
3, where is she when she's being fed by Allah in Surah 3? What's the
In Surah
location?
3?
Yeah.
Oh, look, Rob, you're asking really. I want to get at because Surah 3. Where in Surah 3?
I mean, it's all interconnected. So in Surah 3, ayah, let's see here. Uh, ayah 37. So
Okay.
her mother, right, realizes that she gives birth to a female in ayah
Mm-hmm.
36. And then 37, so her Lord accepted her being Mary, her fully, and caused her to grow up well. And Zachariah took charge of her. When Zachariah entered upon her in the place of prayer, he found a provision of food with her. He said, Mary, where does this
Mm-hmm.
food come to you from? She said, it's from God. And then when you go down all the way to 44, this is one of the stories of the unseen. We inspired you, which is Muhammad, with it. You were not with
The
them when
unseen
they
that
were
we revealed to
casting.
you.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Allah is basically telling Muhammad, you were not with them when they cast their pens as lots to see which of them would take charge of Mary. So
Yeah.
the question is, what's the place of prayer in Mary's original historical context?
What is the place of prayer in Mary's original context?
Yeah, what would be the place that she's in this place of
It says she
worship
went
prayer?
away. She secluded herself. So it doesn't. It's not like a mosque. Are you thinking it's like a mosque or something or a temple?
No, I'm asking you. I'm
Yeah, that's what
interconnecting
I'm saying.
Surah
It doesn't
3
give
with
any
Surah
details.
19.
Yeah, and I'm saying it doesn't give any details. So all do is look in other places, look in other places and see, look in other places and see where they can try to gather information about this and comment on it. So this is what because
Yeah, but
like
it's
I don't
brother,
know what to say, man.
brother. You notice the name of your name is Rational Muslim. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I'm asking a very rational question. It's a question that is, I'm being very honest here. If the Quran is not going to give you details, but why then give very specific terms like Easter, or she's in a place of worship or prayer when she's being fed?
is that
This
is
very
that
specific
not a
question
detail?
that is a detail. That's why I'm asking. Where's this eastern place? Where was she from originally to then lead to this eastern place? For her to then approach date palms and then shake the date palm tree and all this stuff. Where was this concealment location? Where did that happen for this angel Gabriel to appear to her?
Okay. Uh, I don't really understand, bro. I understand what you're saying, but I don't understand how that is. Why that is not. I mean, this information is not. It's not relevant to your salvation or anything. It's just looking for extra details, and you can always look for extra details. If I tell you, if let's say we knew where the place was, and I told you, you could still ask something like, "Oh, what particular direction?" You could always ask more questions. So, like, do you understand what I'm saying?
Assalamu alaikum. Can I just add a little bit? There is
Of course.
yes, we can bring out a particular name called Katisma Church. Katisma Church. So there have been excavations around Israel, like between this church is located between Jerusalem and Bethlehem, and from archaeological discoveries, like there is high indications that this is where Mary actually gave birth to Jesus Christ. So, and that some early Christians actually hold that place to be sacred. So, and some writings that were found inside the like is it was discovered during the whole building was discovered during road expansion between Jerusalem and Bethlehem, as I said. And then some of the writings that were found in it shows that there was once a palm tree that was there, and there was once a river that was flowing around there. So maybe if you can just share a screen, you can let's just check for the Katisma Church. Katisma Church. Katesma Church. Katisma Church. So this is something that has been discussed recently by scholars.
You're very good. You're the first Muslim to answer it specifically with the Katisma connection, because the architecture of the Katisma Church is exactly the same as the Dome of the Rock, and yet the Katisma Church predates the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. That's what I find very curious.
So let me get that again. You said what?
The architectural layout of the Katisma Church, which predates the Dome of the Rock, is exactly the same as the Dome of the Rock.
So what's now the objection there? What's the objection?
No. So the fact that you brought up Katisma Church, I've never heard a Muslim actually bring that up. So kudos to you for bringing that up. My question.
So you knew the answer, Rob?
Well, this is part of my research in regards to the stories of the Quran, and my question to you was...
Well, this is a historical answer, bro. This is not
why does the Quran have these details? Like, I didn't want to go into the deep end because I may have lost you going straight to the deep end stuff. So, but your friend here has already brought that up. So
that's why I brought him on.
Yeah, and just like our brother said, it's not necessary we know about some of these details because not every Muslim is actually interested in it. So it's only when you're interested in research and you want to go into extra details. Like these things are not related to your salvation, and that's the reason why the Quran does not go into all those details. The Quran keep it simple, concise, and straight to the point. So, and when you analyze the general statement that are given in the Quran, you realize that it still makes sense and it's relevant to our salvation. And it's at the end of the day, when you make your research, you realize that those things in the Quran are still consistent with what we are going to discover. So I don't think it's actually necessary to prove that what is in the Quran is actually the truth. We could do that for extra details, but it's not necessary when we are talking about salvation and we are really interested in the truth. It's not really necessary.
Hope you got that, Rob.
Yeah, I did. Did you guys have a plan for talking with guests like myself, or did you have your own interview show?
No. This is what we wanted to do. That's the name of the stream, right? Non-Muslims ask about Islam. Okay. But you're the only one here, so we got to keep you on.
Okay. Okay, so if I can ask your celebrity some questions here.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Sorry, that I don't mean that derogatory. I mean that.
No. Of course.
Respect, because the host mentioned you're a celebrity. So, I mean, I would call you a celebrity because I'm thankful that you know about things like Katisma. So, so let me just be a little bit more transparent then. So I've been doing a deep dive.
Nice. This is what the chat has wanted all along, man.
Well, I've been transparent. But I guess I can now relax more and open up more with the more granular stuff. So, Niger Muslim. I've been doing a deep dive into the Quran. I've been reading the Quran. I'm up to Surah 25, so I've been reading the Quran for the last 8 months, thereabouts. And I am bewildered by what I find in it. So when I obviously I'm a Christian, obviously I believe in the Bible, but I'm not going to put the Bible as the filter by which I judge the Quran. Okay. Instead, my approach to the Bible critically is the same way I would approach the Quran. So if I look at ancient Near Eastern myth and history and legend with respect to, say, the creation accounts in Genesis or whatever, there's an intertextual comparison I can do. When I look at the Quran and I do the same thing, I can't help but notice that from what I've seen so far, every detail only goes back to some common era tafsir, an interpretation, a legend, sometimes mistaken, that the Quran presumes is historically true, but really it's the imaginations of people who thought it could be the case, but it really isn't. And that's what I've seen so far in the 25 surahs. And I've come across the term, which appears apparently 9 times in the Quran, but I've come across the pushback that Muhammad has had, and that is, this is tales of the ancients, these recountings of the people of the past.
Asatirul awwalin.
That's
what you're
where
referring
that's so far that's what I'm seeing. So, I mean, I can give you examples. So, like Surah 19 is a classic one. The Kathisma connection would be one. I can talk about Abraham being saved from the fire. That clearly comes from a mistranslation by Jerome and many other Jews at the time who mistranslated the word or. I can talk about Dul Kanain, Surah 18, the cave dwellers. I can talk about.
Okay,
Yeah,
Rob.
I can go on and on. With all
Are
that.
you saying that these stories are not true? Is that what you're saying?
Well, not true in the sense that they don't go past into the BC period. So, like the story of Joseph in Surah 12. You know this. We know the notion where he walks into the room and all the women cut their hands because they're like, "Oh my gosh, he's so beautiful. He's no mere man. He must be some angelic like beauty." Stuff like that I can find in Syriac homilies and Syriac legends that predate the Quran and Muhammad, but post-date the 1st century. So in other words, if it's in the Quran, I ask the why question. Anthropologically, why is it there? And if I can only
Maybe
find
because
it in,
it's true. You ever thought about it that way? Maybe it's there because it's true.
no, I'm not saying because it's true or not true. I'm neutral. I'm asking the anthropological question. Why does, say, the Joseph story, Surah 12, why does it exist in the Quran? If it's
And that's what we're
true, I
saying,
would
because
find
it's
some
true.
sort of antecedent into the BC period sort of context. But I only find parallels of that exact same story, especially down to the cutting of the hands by those women, in the Syriac homilies, say Ephraim the Syrian and people soon on, like 4th, 5th century AD, they will repeat the same sort of story.
Bro.
Yeah.
So you're saying what you're trying to say simply. I think what you've been trying to say from the start is that the Quran copies from certain place or certain place. That's what you're trying to say, right?
It gives
Like,
it gives the appearance of a transmission into Arabic. These particular stories, yeah. I'm not saying copying. I would say there's like a transference or transmission into. And if the Quran
but
does
listen,
come
Rob.
from Allah, then Allah is putting His approval on these stories.
Yeah. So listen, Rob. If the Quran is the words of Allah, then that means these stories are true. So what does that have to do with where it was before? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. But then,
And also, there are details in the Quran about these ancient stories that you don't find anywhere else.
Yes, and I think that is where we need to actually explain more. Bro,
Right?
when we
So
say,
I'll let you have the stage, bro. Let you have the stage.
okay, sorry, thank you very
so
much.
Nigel, I hope you understand where I'm coming
Yes,
from.
I get your point. The Quran says, Quran chapter 10, verse 37, it says, وَمَا كَانَ هَذَا الْقُرْآنُ أَنْ يُفْتَرَ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ وَلَكِنْ تَصْدِيقَ الَّذِي بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ. Okay, the Quran is not such as can be produced by any other than God. On the contrary, it is a confirmation of what went before it. Now, the Quran does not mention any specific book. Every single truth that has happened historically before the Quran is here to confirm them. وَتَفْصِيلَ الْكِتَابِ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ مِنْ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ, and to fully explain the book and where there is no doubt from the Lord of the world. So the Quran has already established the stage that every
That's how
single
Surah 2 starts, right? Here is a book where there's no
truth
doubt.
that has come before the Quran has come to confirm it. So the first point you need to know is these stories you just give for example. Number one, they actually prove the truthfulness of the Prophet Muhammad. Let me give you why. Think about a man in a desert who does not just talk about the knowledge of his time also talk about knowledge of the past, because at the end of the day, like many of these things you just brought up, like the story of Abraham, the story of the seven sleepers and what have you, these are only recent knowledge that we are able to now know. And someone in the desert, so when you continue, like if you continue giving sources, at the end of the day, we might recall about 20 or 30 different sources. So it's almost as if you are now accusing Prophet Muhammad of having access to all of these different sources. So he has access to the Jewish Bible, to the Christian Bible. He has access to the Midrash. He had access to the Jewish commentaries. He had access to whatever manuscript was there before, and somehow he is able to, from all of these different manuscripts, bring up some portions of those manuscripts that enters into the Quran. So, like, how can a 7th century Arab dweller has access to all of this knowledge combined together? Because when you combine all of these things together, it becomes like profound. Like, so you are saying someone who does not know how an Arab dweller who does not know how to read and write has access to all of this knowledge combined together. Like, it becomes like, what are we saying? That's the first thing. Secondly, when you analyze all those places you say the Quran, maybe you do not use the word copy, but most likely that's what you are implying. If you check the details, you realize that the details are not exactly the same. So the Quran, yes, mentions, let's say, a detail that is found in a previous book in the past. However, when you go to that book and compare the story in that book and the story in the Quran, you realize that the details are not the same. So how is it that, okay, Prophet Muhammad is copying, and he's not copying all the details. He's only copying what seems to actually make sense and what seems that if you go historically, we can actually verify it. So, sorry, can you just on my camera for me? I wanted to adjust my camera before, but let's see. My background is not that good, but let's just on
You
it.
can turn it on yourself.
Okay.
Abdulmalik, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let me see.
Is mine not coming in clear?
What am I not
Just
seeing
clarify.
myself?
Yeah.
Okay, I think yeah. So here with
Yeah,
me.
there we go. Hey, now I can put a face to,
Yeah, thank you.
who's talking. Yeah.
I quickly went to take this book. I quickly
What's
went
it called again?
to our library. It's called The Lost Books of the Bible and the Forgotten Books of Eden.
Who's it by?
So, it's just a random collection by, let me see the one who collected it. So that doesn't seem to have an author. It seems to just have a publisher and stuff like that. What it is a collection of some of those books that did not make it into the New Testament.
Okay.
Yeah. So it contains the infancy gospel of Thomas and so on and so forth. So, like,
yes. Yeah.
yes. So if you, I even highlighted some parts. So here I highlighted where Jesus Christ formed beds with clay, right? So the Quran talks
That's
about
from Surah Al-Ma'idah, right? The table.
yes, Surah Al-Ma'idah, Surah Al-Imran, Quran chapter 3. So the Quran talks about this. However, when you keep on reading within this book, you see that Jesus Christ, when he was actually small, he actually killed a boy. Within the same story, he killed a boy. So he was passing one day and he brushed his shoulder with another boy. And then he turned around and said, "Be dust." And the boy turned to dust. So within the same story, the Quran does not copy Jesus Christ killing a boy, but the Quran talks about Jesus Christ forming beds from clay. So what the Quran is trying to say in essence is the story about forming beds from clay is actually true, and the story about not about killing a boy is most likely not to be true, and that's why the Quran does not include it. Right? And then finally, I would like to say that for the simple fact that, okay, there is a similar story in a past document and it's now reflected in the Quran, does not mean that it is just like that, it is wrong. No, because in fact we have the same thing in the New Testament, where the book of Jude quotes from the apocryphal book of Enoch. Right? So yet the apocryphal book of Enoch is not considered as canonical by Christians, but the book of Jude is considered canonical. So the idea is no single scholar believes that an ancient book is 100% wrong. Like everything in an ancient book, like it's not possible. There has to be something that is correct in it. Even there is a statement that even
Exactly.
a clock, a dead clock,
A bad clock is wrong, is right twice a day.
right twice a day. Yeah. So there has to be
Exactly,
something
man.
that, yeah. So that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. This is
So
why
let's
this
All
get
right.
guy's
just
my celebrity now.
I can see why he's your celebrity.
This is everything.
Okay, so um, let me start with like Surah 5 interconnected with the infancy gospel and Jude and all that.
Rob. Rob,
Hmm?
are we going to talk about the same thing again?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts based on what he shared. Like there's a lot that he mentioned there that I would like clarification on.
But is there anything he said that you disagree with?
A lot of it I disagree with. A lot
Like
of it
what?
I'm
Like what
aware
do you
of.
disagree with? Mm-hmm.
So that's why I said let's start with, for example, Surah 5.
Okay.
Okay.
If you can, you just allow me to summarize my points again, so that you know exactly what you want to reply to. The first point I made is the fact that when you look at all of this reference where you think that the Quran is copying from, when you put them all together, it becomes like a huge source of information. Like we can reference like 30 or 40 books that we cannot say somebody from 7th century Arabia would have access
Could
to
have had.
all of this knowledge combined
Mm-hmm.
together. When you combine
Exactly.
all of it together, the second point is that I am saying that within those, if we just pick one reference and say, okay, let's compare what is in the details in that document with what is in the Quran, you realize that the details are not exactly the same, and the Quran leaves out some portions of it, and the Quran takes out some portions of it, right? And the third one is what I now my reference to the book of Jude in relation to the book of apocryphal book of Enoch. Yeah.
All right. So let's go backwards.
Okay.
The whole Bible is a human work. Okay? It's not a book sent from heaven. It's a human work that has a divine stamp to say that this is it'll do its job, basically. That's, as a Christian, that's what I believe the Bible is. I don't believe that it's like the Quran, recitation from like a heavenly mother book that's from eternity or something like that. That's the clear difference between you and I. You believe the Quran is directly from Allah, and since Allah is perfect and all-knowing, he can't get history wrong. Whatever he says happened, like Jesus making clay bird, stuff like that. For example, the Pharaoh drowning in Surah 10. He's giving an attempt of a shahada. Obviously, it says his body's preserved and he drowns. So these are very specific details, right? Very specific statements that if it did not happen in history, there's a direct connection to Allah being wrong, in other words. So when it comes to the Bible, I have no issue with Jude using Enoch, or I don't have no issue with Paul in the pastoral epistles, like in Timothy when he speaks about Yambres
No, Rob. Sorry
and
to interrupt
Janus.
you, but I'll tell you why you do have a problem, Rob. Because you believe these people are what's it called? You believe these people
Inspired.
are guided by the Holy Spirit, right?
Mm.
Do you believe in that as an Orthodox?
Yes, yeah, but that has nothing to do with dictating consonant by consonant or comma by comma or word for word what the Holy Spirit wants them to say. In other words, they didn't fall into a trance and like in the Matrix where they just downloaded with information. None of that was happening. When you said guide, the Greek term for guide there is actually sailing terminology. The analogy is that the author, just like the winds of a ship that is guided by the wind, the sails of the ship that's guided by the wind. So the analogy there is the ship, the captain of the boat, the foreman of the boat, they all have their own autonomous agendas, but they're still relying on the wind patterns, the weather patterns. And so then the wind guides the ship relative to the decisions that the captain has. So the same thing with the authors of the Bible. Any author of the Bible has a thought or a decision to do something when he or she is writing. But then the Holy Spirit can act as a guiding principle theologically. So if Enoch, so the context of Enoch is that he's talking about the zealots during the 70 AD destruction of the
Sorry to
temple.
cut you off, but if they were doing something that's not right, would the Holy Spirit guide them back to what's right?
Yeah, it's both and. So in other words, now with respect to Jude, scholars notice a very interesting parallel between 2nd Peter and Jude. This is why 2nd Peter and Jude are usually juxtaposed as being verbatim in their argumentation. Peter has a context for the diaspora Jews that are spreading out, whereas Jude specifically is nothing but a heavily truncated version of, say, 2nd Peter with respect to the zealots and the zealot movement as the Romans are going to destroy the temple. And so Jude then is using what scholars call Second Temple texts, like the Book of Enoch, to make polemical and theological reflections on who Jesus is relative to, Caesar, and it's like no different to me in the 21st century if I use analogies from, say, Avatar, Star Wars, Dune, the Marvel movies, the Matrix.
Okay, Rob,
I can
don't
use.
worry about it. Let's not go into a tangent, Rob. Just I think we're going to a tangent. Just deal with what Abdulmalik is.
Right. So
we're about to say
I'm
something.
saying is all I'm saying is the Bible is a human work, and it's utilizing other human works right from Genesis all the way to Revelation. So if the author of the Torah is using ancient Near Eastern creation accounts, so in other words, the flood narrative or the Atrahasis epic involves a guy named Utnapishtim. That would be the equivalent of Noah for Genesis. So now when it comes to the examples laid out, the difference here is Allah is actually saying what happened in history. So now you brought up Surah 5. Now, just after the discussion of Jesus making a clay bird, which comes from the only other historical text that ever speaks about a clay bird stuff is the infancy gospel of Thomas. There's no other ancient text apart from the Quran and the infancy gospel that speaks about clay bird stuff with Jesus. But just after that, you then get the verses that then give you the reason why it's called Al-Ma'idah, the table. So from Ayah 111, so Ayah 111 to 115, we have a discussion between Isa and his disciples. And because Ayah 112 says...
Rob, I'm going to have to cut you off again, man, but I think you're doing a lot of tiptoeing. Right? Just get straight to the point,
Yeah, no,
I know we don't have anybody. We have a lot of time here. I'm not trying to rush you, but you could go straight to the point, bro.
I'm going. No, well, I had to go switch the screen around so I can open the Quran so I can quote it faithfully to you and not misquote it.
No
so
problem,
in Ayah 112. So
Okay.
this is just after the clay bird thing, okay? My question to you, Nijan, is why is that a discussion? So see, when the disciples said, Jesus, son of Mary, is your Lord able to send down on us a table from the sky? He said, guard yourselves against God if you are believers. They said, we wish to eat from it and satisfy our hearts so that we may know with certainty that you have spoken truthfully to us and that we may be among the witnesses to it. Then 114 says, Jesus, son of Mary, said, God, our Lord, send down on us a table from the sky to be a festival for us, for the first of us and last of us, and a sign from you. Provide for us, for you are the best of providers. And then God basically says, yep, I'm going to send it down to you and whoever displeased and blah, blah, blah. So question, now that we get specifically to why the surah is called the table, what is that table that was sent down from heaven? Because the scholars who analyze this will say this is an allusion to either the Last Supper, the Eucharist, or This is an allusion to the feeding of the 5,000 miracle. Which one is it?
Again, we don't really need to know the specific details of what you're trying to say, and it is not necessary that it's not necessary that it has to be the Last Supper or the feeding of the 5,000. It could be another separate event, and it could still be one of these, right? But the point is, first of all, I think you've not even replied to the 3 points I raised
Exactly.
from our previous discussion, and then this one too has really. I just feel we should have a discussion, right? But we should have discussions that matter. Let's not just say for the sake
Yeah,
of
exactly.
for the sake
It's
of
not.
wasting time, let's just bring up issues like this. No, if we don't find out, if we haven't known exactly what the table is all about and whether the table is related to the Last Supper, I don't think it's necessary here. See, let me tell you something. The Quran is not meant for this. What the Quran does, and that's the reason why I keep telling people, one of the reasons why we could memorize the Quran is because of the concisiveness of the Quran. The Quran, I think, is 1/3 of the Old Testament, if not even smaller than that. So the Quran wants to just give you a highlight of major event that happened in the past, in the life of any prophet, without necessarily bore you with details that has no relationship with your salvation or whatever. However, if you make your research further, you could actually trace some of this, just as scholars have done so far, trace some of those stories to an ancient event that has happened in the past, right? It's possible. But what we are trying to say here is we just want to keep the discussion much more like a kind of much more focused. Like there is a goal that we want to understand each other. I just feel we are going to what is not relevant. So first and foremost, the three response I gave has not been touched. And I think you touched a little bit on the last part on Jude.
To be fair, I want to be fair with you. Let's go through the points you raise, so that therefore you can be fair with me, because I don't feel like I misanswered your questions or your points. Clarify to me what I didn't answer or what I didn't clarify.
Okay, you haven't answered the three. You only responded to one of it, which is the last point about Jude copying or referencing the second apocryphal book of Enoch, right? And then the answers you gave, seriously, no, I don't think anyone who is going to be satisfied with it, because as a Christian, Christians believe that
the answers I gave, nobody's what?
It's going to be satisfied with it. Satisfied. Yeah.
Why do you think?
Because as a Christian, the Christian belief is that the writers of the Bible, of the New Testament, are guided by the Holy Spirit, right? And then let me just read it out, what he says. And then Jude says, and I quote, now, Jude chapter 1, verse 14, he's making a statement, and he said, now Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied about this man, also saying, behold, the Lord comes with 10,000 of his saints to execute judgment on all, to convict all who are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds, which they have committed in an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. So he is saying, he's quoting Enoch and saying that Enoch said this. So we can't, this is something historical that he's attributing to Enoch. That Enoch, the historical Enoch that lived in this world, when he was alive, he made a statement, and this is the statement. And then when you now go to the book of Enoch, the apocryphal book of Enoch, we see, and behold, he cometh with 10,000 of his holy ones to execute judgment upon all, and to destroy all the ungodly, and to convict all flesh of all the works of their ungodliness, which they have ungodly committed, and of all the hard things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. Exactly the same. So, and he's referring to Enoch and saying that Enoch made this statement while he was alive. So I think this is very clear to anyone who wants to be sincere and to be straightforward. So he is being guided by the Holy Spirit, Jude, to quote the book of Enoch and say that Enoch, while he was alive, made so and so statement. So if that is wrong, then it means that this guy is not guided by the Holy Spirit, and we should not trust him. That's what it means. So it's exactly the same thing as the Quran. It's just our difference in narrative doesn't change anything. because we believe that our own is a direct revelation from God Almighty, and you believe that, okay, no, yours is not a direct revelation from God Almighty, but these are men who have been inspired through the Holy Spirit to make these truth claims. So it's still the same thing. So I don't
Yeah,
see how it's
but are you aware of like the Enoch seminar? Are you aware of the scholarship that's gone into the similitudes of Enoch relative to the Book of the Watchers of First Enoch? Like First Enoch is not one monolithic text. It's a collection of, it's amalgamation of various versions of what was called Enoch in a pseudepigraphical form. It's not apocrypha. It's a Second Temple text that whoever the author was or authors, they wanted to fill in the gaps with respect to the exile. So when the Jews came out of Babylon, there's a lot of Babylonian myth and tradition. You know, the so-called seventh from Adam, right? That whole Adam to Noah, the 10 names. That follows after what's called the Sumerian king list, because the Sumerian king list in Babylon also had 10 names. It's part of what's called the Adapa myth. So Adapa for the Babylonians would be Adam for the Jews. And the seventh Enochian character for the Babylonians would be Enoch for the Jews. Utnapishtim being the Noah for the Jews. So that template, the Babylonians had a version of history. Enoch, this Enoch character for the Babylonians was like the guy who introduced knowledge and wisdom post-flood, supposedly, from a pre-flood world, transitioning that into a post-flood world. So this falls under what's called the Apkallu myth. The Apkallu would be the equivalent of the sons of God of Genesis 6. I could go on and on, but
you're making so much statements.
the thing is, I'm aware of what you're talking about. What I'm saying is, Enoch as a text is vital for Second Temple scholars who have the interest to see what Jews were doing mythically to try and bridge Jewish theology, like demonology. Like where do demons come from? Jinn, for example, where do they come from? Because of their rich heritage coming from the exile. So all Jews knew that Enoch, the book First Enoch, is not written by the actual Enoch guy. They all of them knew that. So therefore, because it's in the Bible, or in this case in the New Testament, is actually vital to understanding why the New Testament authors do what they do. Because you have other what's called pesha or pesharim, which is a word means interpretation, among the Dead Sea Scrolls. You have Jews doing all sorts of things with these texts to make a larger polemical, response.
Rob, if there's anything I learned from what you are saying, is that we shouldn't really trust the book of Jude. If there is anything you are saying, that is the whole point.
No, but just to clarify, where in that did I say anything to do with that?
I'm implying that from everything you've said, what it implies is that we shouldn't really trust the book of Jude for everything it says, because sometimes the book of Jude could actually quote sources that are not really true, but somehow it's relevant to history and stuff like that. Because I've read something regarding to it, the way you're explaining it. I've read something relating to this, where some scholars are of the opinion that when you read the New Testament and you come across mistakes and you come across things that are not historical, right? It doesn't really matter. What really matters is that these writers are just using all of these sources to make a particular point, and it is that particular point that they are making that is the truth of their whole claims. The whole reference that they gave does not really matter. So a good example will be Origen in the 3rd century, who made a statement about the book of John, I think in the commentary of John chapter 10, and he said the material truth in spiritual falsehood. The material truth in spiritual falsehood. So the example, I'll give an example. So for example, let's say Jesus, he wants to tell us that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. This writer makes up an entire dialogue. He brings up an entire dialogue between two people, Jesus Christ and someone else. And then Jesus Christ is speaking to the person, and the person is replying. And then as the dialogue keeps on going, at some point in time, Jesus Christ make the statement, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So he is there of the opinion that, you know what, that final state, that the climax of the whole verse that we are reading, where it says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. This is the spiritual truth that the author wants to bring out. However, every other thing related to that, the whole dialogue related to the event, is actually not, we don't really consider it whether it is true or not. And that's why there are scholars today who believe in the Bible, and they don't believe that the raising of the dead, the resurrection of the saints in Matthew chapter 27, right? They don't believe it actually happened
It's
in reality.
real.
They believe it's a special effect. Yet they still believe in the Bible. Like, it's just a special effect that has been employed by the Bible. This man called Mike Licona, he's an apologist.
Michael Lacone.
Yeah, I'm
Yes,
good friends with him. I know him
yes.
personally.
Mike Licona is of the opinion that Matthew 27 is special effect.
Yeah, no.
Yet Mike Licona believes in the Bible. So now, for us, we say to us, these things are not, indirectly, you are telling us that this writer should not be trusted, because they could simply make up stories, or they could simply reference sources that are not really entirely historical to make their point. But you are telling us that we should be focused on the point that they want to make, rather than, we should not be focused on all those tangents, all the references that they went to. We should not be focused on
No,
all.
no. I think if what you're saying, if you're saying that the Bible can't be any other work, like it has to be some, like a book that's just fallen out of the sky that has no literary genre to it. So for example, you brought up Matthew's account of the graves opening up, because it's juxtaposed just after Jesus cries out, right? And just before the centurion says, truly this is the Son of God. And you have this very interesting, again, pesha, or like a midrash that Matthew throws in, which Mark doesn't have, Luke doesn't have, John doesn't have. So Matthew's unique in this, about the people going into the holy city, right? The reason why it's a midrash is because the resurrection
What's a
hasn't
midrash,
happened
Rob?
yet. A midrash is like an interpolation, sort of like an editorial
Okay.
comment. Like, and this fits right in line with the wholesale. Oh, by the way, your guest has disappeared.
Yeah, he's coming back.
I'll wait for him to come back. Yeah.
Oh, while you're waiting, how about you? He asked 3 questions, right? The first one was, you see, all these things that you're saying you find in other places. He said if you were to gather them all together, then you would find that the Quran, if what you're saying is true, that the Quran is quoting from almost 40 documents that maybe none of them were in Arabic. Then his question to you was, how would the Prophet Muhammad, who could not read or write, right, will be able to have access to all these documents?
Are you familiar with?
So that's a question to you.
Right. Are you familiar with the Yaqeen Institute?
What's wrong? What's up with them?
No, nothing wrong with them. They actually released an article like a couple of months ago where they finally answered or engaged this very question that I've raised, because all the scholars have been asking the same question. When you do an analysis of the Quran and you see the Quran verbatim repeating these legends and tales that would fit what we would call midrash and pesha and tafsir, they ask that. Well, they make the same point. Because don't forget, they're Muslims, right? So, but they're sensitive to the scholarship. So they're saying, look, we believe that Muhammad is this illiterate dude. Basically, the implication is this guy has to have a whole library in his backyard. Now, what's interesting
if your position is true, right?
Yes. And what's interesting is that they don't deny this library worth of information. They actually affirm that there's no out to this. I can give you the link. They say, look, as Muslims, we need to acknowledge that the Quran does give the impression, at least, that this is.
I don't think that's what they're saying, Rob. I don't think that's what they're saying. I haven't read this article. But what I think they're saying, right, is that if someone like you, if you are going to reject that the Quran, basically what we're saying to you, if you're going to reject this, then how do you explain? The only rational explanation for this is the library. But he didn't have that. Do you understand that, Rob?
No. The Yaqeen Institute, it's in the title itself. The Quran's engagement with Jewish and Christian traditions. And so they then conclude by saying, look, we can't deny that everything we read about in the Quran do come from these legends. The difference, though, is that since they are still Orthodox Muslims, since they believe that the Quran comes from Allah, that's the miracle. The miracle is that since they believe that Muhammad is illiterate, the only explanation for why the Quran is the way it is because it's a miracle inspiration to a guy who could not have known about all these various details, which also involve, guess what? Foreign languages, foreign loan words, cognate words that are not Arabic in origin. And,
okay, so Rob, do you believe he had that library? This is just a simple question. I think we will end here. Do you believe he had that library?
No, I don't. Here's where things get interesting. Wait.
Then what's the point? If you don't believe, that's the only explanation.
No, but here's where things get interesting.
Okay, I'm listening.
How many years transpired between the cave experience and the last revelation that he provided? How many years was that?
What?
How many?
It was 23.
Okay, all right. So over those 23 years, we're expecting 114 chapters of the Quran to emerge, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rob, stop the tiptoe. Get right to it. Come on.
No, the point here is that in those 22, 23 years, and then when you align the surahs chronologically with respect to his journeys, okay, not chronologically with respect to what we find canonically, but with respect to the evolution of Islam, the evolution of his revelation. Linguists who then analyze the deliberate rhyming that has to transpire. So, for example, Saul, Talut, has to rhyme with Jalut, which is Goliath. But Talut just means tall man. It's not really getting to the whole issue of Saul, once upon a time, who was the king of Israel. And then what the Quran then does with Talut is that it confuses the story of Gideon from Judges 7 and presumes that's the story of Saul.
Look, we're still going back to the same thing. Let's just focus on this. This is the crux of the matter. Wait, Rob. Listen, Rob. What do you believe is the explanation for the fact that he had access to these?
My belief is that the Quran...
No, forget about the Quran. Muhammad. Let's talk about Muhammad, alayhi salatu wasalam. How could he have had access to these? If you said you don't believe he had the library. So what's the explanation?
Yeah, my based on what I've been reading so far, is that the 22, 23 year period does naturally explain this jumbled up confusion of legends that were compiled together, because everything from Adam to Jesus that I find.
But where did he get them from, Rob? That's the question. Where did he get them from, according to you?
From Syriac Christians who are also Ethiopian.
How could he read that? How could he read that?
But that's your assumption that he's illiterate. I find some translators argue that the word.
Okay, Rob. I think we're done, Rob. I think we're done, Rob.
Come on. So Rob, just look at
don't.
Hold on.
I'm being very respectful here. Don't just laugh and
let's
dismiss me.
Let's not laugh about it.
Okay.
Rob, you can see, in order for you to dismiss the Prophet Muhammad,
mute myself.
You need to force the narrative that he's learned. like something that is supposed to be like you are now giving him. You are attributing to him. You need to attribute to him a kind of like, because to be learned is something that is like is something that we all know that is good. So you need to give him some special accolades in order to achieve what you want to do. So in other words, you know that if you just take the traditional view that he is unlearned, there will be no way that you can actually get to this point. But now you need to give him some accolades. You need to
Yeah.
raise. You need to step up his background a little bit and say, you know what, I think he is actually learned. But it doesn't just end there, Rob. It even becomes there are layers that you are forgetting here. Let me give you an example. Let's say all what we've done here, we've been speaking so far in English. You understand English, I understand English. Now, with everything we've said so far, you know what I've said so far. Now, rewrite those statements that I've said so far in English in beautiful, rhythmical English that will have good rhythm, that will have good grammar in the highest fluency in English language. It doesn't just end there. Even if you assume he knew those language and he could read, now how do you transform a story in a different language and transform it in your own Arabic language, and it goes in the highest level of Arabic grammar with all the rhythm? And how do you do that? Because it also needs another form of talent for you to do that. Our musicians, this is what they do. Like it takes a lot of talent for you to even release a particular song with full of rhymes. Let me give you an example. The Quran says, this Surah Al-Maryam that we've talked about so far. Let me just read out something. Please just take note of the last what do we call it? Just take note of how my intonation towards the last and the ending. Listen. Zikru rahmati rabbika abdahu Zakariya. Just listen to that word, Zakariya. إذ نادى ربه نداء خفيا قال ربي إني وهن العظم مني واشتعل رأس شيبة ولم أكن بدعائك ربي شقيا وإني خفت الموالي من وراي وكانت امرأتي عاقرا فهب لي من لدنك وليا يرثني ويرث من آل يعقوب واجعله ربي رضيا يا زكريا إنا نبشرك بغلام اسمه يحيى لم نجعل له من قبل سميا. How do you do this? Even if you assume he already knows the story or he could read it in his own language, how do you now transfer this thing you've read in such beautiful Arabic words that have rhythm, that have the highest level of Arabic grammar? How do you do that?
Like, yeah, but what my question to you, and it's a serious question, and I've noticed with all my discussion with Muslims, they always seem to be either they'll just ignore the question or they want to engage the question.
Okay, last question, Rob. Just give it to us straight. I'll answer you straight.
This is for your guest here. I like where he's going with this. So my question to you is,
I'll let him live. I'll let him have
it.
So
my question to you is, you were quoting by the sounds of it, Yahya was there, so John the Baptist, Zechariah. This is in the connection with Mary. If she's being fed by God in the temple, as Surah 3 says, or she goes to an eastern place with the date palms, and you yourself mentioned the Charisma Church, these are nothing but apocryphal, Gnostic, legendary accounts. So, for example, the Proto-Evangelion of James says that they did cast lots or pens as to who would be her guardian. The lot landed on Joseph. Why? And by the way, why were they casting lots according to the Proto-Evangelion of James? Because she already reached her menses. She was unfit to be a temple vestal virgin. So in other words, when she reached the menses, she's unclean to be a priestess in the temple. So someone needs to be her guardian. But while she's in the temple, the same story says that God sent angels to feed her.
Mic is going off.
But Surah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. But Surah 3 repeats the same thing, but instead of saying angels, it says directly Allah is the one feeding Mary in the temple. The question is, you can go through the whole rhyming and the poetic beauty of the Arabic and so on. Is the story true? Did it actually happen in history that once upon a time there was a woman named Mary being fed by God in the temple? She goes and secludes herself, veils herself, then this angel appears as a perfect human. Surah 19 says this. She's shocked, thinking, Ibn Kathir presumes this, by the way, thinking she'll be raped. This angel says, no, don't worry, I'm just a messenger from Allah. Is this true? You mentioned Kathisma Church. That in itself is a telltale big red flag, because the fact that you have Kathisma lectionaries that says that
Rob, we're
Aaron
going
is
in
the
circles
brother
again,
of Mary, and the Quran repeats that same language. Aaron,
Rob, please, I'm
Mary
not
being
trying
the
to be
sister of
disrespectful,
Aaron.
but let's deal with the premise. We
I'm
can go into tens of examples, but let's deal with the
my
premise.
friend,
You understand that,
I'm
Rob?
dealing directly with the Quran. He himself brought up issues with the Bible. I responded with respect to that the Bible is a human work that is engaging with all the works of the known period. If the difference here is the Quran comes directly from Allah. So, for example,
But can you
Abraham
prove these
being
things are wrong? Can you prove they didn't happen?
yes, I will
How
show
can
you
you do
one.
that?
Okay, one example will be which one do you want to tackle as a litmus test, as an example of the complete wrongness of it.
Abdulmalik pick one.
Niger,
Comment.
I
Just
can
pick one.
let's deal with which one would you want to deal with?
You just
Pharaoh
pick one.
drowning in Surah 10 or Abraham being saved from the fire? Which one?
Pick one. Let's pick let's pick Pharaoh drowning.
Okay, drowning. Now, which pharaoh was it in Egyptian history do you think happened with the Exodus?
I don't know.
The one that was around when Moses was around.
Ramses, whatever.
Yeah, but you can't just say the one that will happen. That's so vague. Okay, but specifically, which dynasty of Egypt would be 18th
Yes, I want you
dynasty,
to understand
19th
something.
dynasty?
You are forcing me that if I don't know history, if I don't know what happens in history, and I don't know all these dynasties, maybe somehow it makes the Quran wrong. But the point is, I want you to understand something. I get the point that there's always been debate about whether the pharaoh that the Quran talks about that drowned and whose body is preserved, whether it is the body of the pharaoh of Moses or some other Egyptian king, right? I know there's been this debate, but it still does not take away from the miracle of the verse, because as at the time that the Prophet Muhammad is saying these things, the whole concept of mummification, the whole idea, the whole knowledge about mummification, the world at that time never knew about it. That the ancient Egyptians mummify the dead bodies of their kings and their royals. It only has to be around there was 1899 where the Rosetta Stone was discovered. If you've heard about the Rosetta Stone, from there they discovered that there's what we call the hieroglyphics, the ancient language of the Egyptians. Through study, they were able to decipher the hieroglyphics, and then they now realized they were able to, like, a whole new culture and civilization of the ancient Egyptians was open to us. And from there, we now know that yes, indeed, the ancient Egyptians actually mummified the dead bodies of their royals and their kings. So even if we don't know the particular king, we cannot trace the pharaoh that the Quran talks about. We cannot trace who exactly he is in terms of all the dead bodies that we now have in our possession, the mummified dead bodies. But the point is the fact that the Quran can reference that these people, the fact that the Quran can reference a preserved body, and today we now realize that the ancient Egyptians actually mummified the dead bodies of their kings. In and of itself is a historical wonder. That the Quran is making a direct reference that the ancient Egyptians could do this thing, that the dead bodies of their kings will be preserved, and then today, historically, we now have this knowledge. This is a historical wonder in and of itself. Even though we cannot say precisely that the body that the Quran talks about in all of the tombs and all of the mummified bodies that we have right now in Egypt, which one is actually the particular body of that pharaoh of Moses? Even though we don't know that, but one thing we know is that the Quran makes that historical accuracy by pointing that the ancient Egyptians actually, they have the ability to preserve the.
Okay, I heard your response, and it's not. You're saying I'm not responding, but that's not a response. That's actually a. Forgive me, with all due respect, that is a misunderstanding of the Egyptological scholarship. So when you mentioned Rosetta Stone, I keep getting this all the time from Muslims. Are you aware of the Rosetta
I
Stone
think
and
you
so
did
on?
not even make any claim in the beginning. I just have to give a general response.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
just
I
mentioned
understand,
Pharaoh, and you
but
mentioned
what's
if I
going
believe which
right?
dynasty does it belong to, and I'm telling you that I don't know the
But
dynasty, but however, it doesn't. There's no relationship between.
what's going through my mind is when you mention Rosetta Stone, immediately I'm thinking, does my friend here understand that the Rosetta Stone is actually a very late uh, second century BC artifact? In other words, not even 100 or 200 years before the New Testament authors were writing the New Testament, you already had the Rosetta Stone as being a late Persian / Greek work.
What does
There were
that mean? What is
pharaohs
it?
existing at the time.
Mhm.
Like this is not some
Look,
mystery
Rob, look,
knowledge.
Rob.
Like everyone is knowing about
So
Egypt and the
then
pharaohs.
why don't we have other people like time of Prophet Muhammad also making this knowledge known to people? Why is it only
No,
Prophet
no, no.
Muhammad who's making this knowledge known to people?
The issue at hand here is that the the Exodus account, okay? Like I'm not, by the way, I'm not appealing to the Exodus and Genesis for history. What I'm saying is
Why not? Why
even
not?
And I
because for the sake of trying not to be biased here, for the sake of being neutral on this whole context,
Okay. Makes
the
sense. Makes
Exodus
sense.
account and even the editor of the Genesis account. So when you're talking about Joseph with this Pharaoh figure, right? So Genesis 47, Exodus 1 and 2 actually have the term Ramses used. So you have editorial uh, placements to say, by the way, this is in the Ramside period and location. And Egyptologists will look at that and immediately go, oh, there's a telltale sign that the editor is appealing to specifically the 19th dynasty of Egypt. Now, when it comes to the actual pharaoh, then, so naturally, there's literally a range that you can allow for Moses, someone like Moses, to exist. Because don't forget, you have to take into account chronologically the issues of kings in Israel. You have to take into account the
Rob,
lifespan of the history of
I know
of the nation of
I'm not
Israel.
this is not my channel,
You
but
can't just haphazardly. Let me just finish my point. You can't just
Rob,
have.
you know so much,
I'll get. I just want to
that
specify
you
this
are
one thing
making no
here.
point at all.
You can't just haphazardly say it could have happened 3000 BC or 2000 BC, the Exodus. No, scholars know that when we look at Egyptian chronology outside the Bible, then you have biblical chronology. Then you have to calibrate the chronologies together to see how they align. The best the two models is that you have an early date, so Amenhotep II being the pharaoh of the Exodus, or the late date, which is Ramses the Great. That's that's the range. So then the
You
next
see
question
this,
is,
Rob? See the comment? You can go to
please
the
display
channel
from the
Many
video of many
Prophets, One
prophets.
Messenger.
Yeah, so the question
You see.
is,
So if you just watch
which
that video, Rob,
pharaoh
because we got
drowned?
someone in the backstage right now. We're trying. What?
That's the
What did you
next
say?
question. The next question is which pharaoh drowned when you calibrate Egyptian chronology with respect to Moses existing and so on. Now notice, the Bible doesn't say the pharaoh drowned. The Quran is very emphatic that, and it puts it on his lips that as the waters are coming up, he then shouts out that there's no other God but the God of the Israelites. And don't forget, Ibn Kathir then follows,
What's the
adds on top of
question?
that the angel Gabriel is stuffing mud in the Pharaoh's mouth to
Just what,
stop him from finishing the
what is
Shahada
the now?
and
What is
so
now
on.
the question and the objection here now?
Yeah.
So the question is, if because the consensus in scholarship is the late date, not the early date. So Ramses being the pharaoh of the Exodus. All right. Now we know when he started his reign, which was 1279 BC, and we know when he died, which was 1213 BC.
Who are you talking about, please?
Ramses the Great.
Which
Now
one? The second?
Ramses, yeah, Ramses second, Ramses the Great. Now he
Okay.
lived for 90 years. Okay. Now, if he's the Exodus pharaoh, it happens specifically in his 7th year of reign. So 1272 BC would be when the Exodus happens. Since he survives the Exodus and dies in 1213, that then contradicts the Quran, because the Quran says he did die in Exodus. But Egyptologists will disagree with that. Like, you even have movies like The Prince of Egypt actually showcasing Ramses surviving the Exodus account. Like, this is well known even in fictional narratives.
And
So
now
the question is, why is the Quran the only book that says the Pharaoh drowned?
By God, this is where you are just making a claim. All this while you've been like, this is where now you are just making a claim. So if I get your point, you are saying, according to what we know of history, right, that the Ramses survived the Exodus, while the Quran says that he actually drowned and he died.
I mean, I'm just using this as an example.
Yes,
Abraham
yes.
from the fire would be another clear example,
yes.
based on the mistranslation.
Yes. So now this is the point here. If this is where all this while,
and we're gonna end here.
I'll give it to that. All this while, this is just the only single point now that you've actually brought about a real objection. All this while, it seems you've been like going here and there. But the point we are
look what Mr. Doctor said.
The point you are missing is from the very beginning, Quran chapter 10, verse 37. I quoted Quran chapter 10, verse 37, where I say that the Quran is bringing back the truth of what happened in the past and a fuller explanation of the book. So the Quran is every single event that has happened that is relative to revelation, that's relative to prophets and what have you. The Quran is bringing them back, and the Quran is telling us the truth of what actually happened. So we are saying that we believe in the Quran, and we have a reason to believe in the Quran. We are saying this is the true event that happened. So maybe, unless you can go back and say, you know what, we have the evidence that Pharaoh died, the Pharaoh of the Ramses of Moses' time, he died during the Exodus and he did not survive it, is 100% accurate. We have no doubt in the matter. There is no any doubt from any scholar anywhere. Then maybe we can accept your claim. But for now, all these things are still an ongoing work, and it's still a research that keeps on going.
The thing is, I hope the examples I've been laying out to you has demonstrated to you that I've been doing my research. Scholars themselves.
No, you do sound like. I don't doubt that you've been doing your research.
And
we don't doubt that.
My point here is not to mock. My point here is to actually ask the big red flag questions I'm having. Every time I look to the Quran for a historical validation, and it always gets it wrong.
Okay.
Abraham from the fire is a classic one.
So it always gets it wrong. So for example, the Quran is saying that the body of the Pharaoh will be preserved, and historically we know that the ancient Egyptians mummified their dead bodies. Is that not accurate? Do you think somebody is capable? Do you think it's possible that somebody from the 7th century will have access to this?
It's very don't isolate that and say because of mummification. No, the mummification process was known by the ancients. Now, I'll just clarify to you. I don't think it's about mummification. I think it's talking about the non-belief of the Israelites, because the Quran says that. It says, those among the Jews who disbelieve the Pharaoh drowned, Allah will preserve his body and not just his body, by the way, his armor, as a sign that he's sovereign and that he did judge the Egyptians and he did judge the Pharaoh. And then the question is, which Pharaoh shows signs of drowning? Now, if Ramses dies at 90, and if he's the Pharaoh of the Exodus, and he dies at 90, but well after the Exodus account, and he didn't actually drown, he actually died possibly due to tooth decay and infections in the face area, and he was also a hunchback. Like they've actually analyzed his skeletal structure, and he was actually walking with a hunch when he was 90. That completely contradicts the Quran. So
you said every single historical event you've checked about the Quran in relation to history, the Quran has gotten it wrong. I gave you an example. I've already answered the question you gave. I've already answered it, because we as Muslims, I don't think we have this mindset in our mind that, you know what, there's going to every single thing the Quran says. When we check a document in ancient history, it's going to be exactly the same. We are saying the Quran is a revelation from God Almighty, and the Quran has
But with
come
all,
to give the right
just quickly,
Hold
notice you
on.
haven't actually given me positive
Then,
evidence.
then I give you an example. You said every single thing you've checked does not tally with history. I give an example of the same event that we're talking about. The fact that the Quran talks about a preservation of the body. How is it from a
Yeah, but
7th century?
that's not an answer. Please
No, I'm
understand.
asking you. I'm not. It's not
That
an
is
answer. I'm
not
not giving you an
positive
answer
evidence or
about
an
it.
answer.
I'm asking you a different question. I'm saying you said every single thing in the Quran that you've checked against history, the Quran
Yes.
does not tally up. So I'm now asking you a question, something different. I'm asking you, how about the fact that the Quran mentions that his body is going to be preserved
Hey,
in later
no bad
generations?
language in the chat, man.
And I'm saying that today, right? Today we now have the knowledge that ancient Egyptians actually mummified their dead bodies or the dead bodies of their royals.
Okay,
I am
okay.
saying that alone, that particular is that not
But
historical wonder?
that is not unique knowledge for anyone living, say, at first century, second century, up until the time of Muhammad. People knew about the mummification
So
process.
who can you mention any other person who knew about the
The
mummification?
question is,
Can you
see how
mention any other person who knew
no
about
no
the
no no
mummification?
no no. The question is, see how there's a person in the comment that said that his name is TMZ
Just
BGD.
forget about people in the comments, please.
No, this is relevant.
Mm,
That person is saying not only the Quran but also Dr. Maurice Buccal did a study explaining the drowning.
yeah.
So
I have the book at home. Dr. Maurice Bukai actually became a Muslim, and this is one of the compelling
yes,
evidence that actually made him to. He wrote a book, The Quran, the Bible, and Modern Science. Right?
yes. So
Yeah.
yeah, but do you know he wasn't an Egyptologist, he's a French
Yes,
doctor.
I know that there's also been response about
He's
it.
been
I'm,
debunked.
I'm only responding to what he
And
said.
but
Yeah.
even his argument wasn't about the mummification process. His
Now,
argument
my
was,
argument, I'm asking you a different question. Can you just like talk to
but
me?
that is not a positive case for the Quran's truthfulness. The Quran is saying, let's just go along with the mummification argument, all right? Let's just say the Quran is making this unique claim that the pharaoh is preserved, mummified, right? Okay, great. Then the mummification process should also preserve the drowning information, which was Maurice's claim, by the way. Maurice then argued that when he apparently analyzed Ramses's body, it
Mm,
came across sand content and salt content
mm,
to that he drowned.
mm.
His um his analysis was no different to fringe pseudoscientific scholarship that we see even in Christian circles. Like, for example, if for Christians we have a guy named Ron Wyatt who claimed, like he was like an Indiana Jones. He claimed
Let's not go
radical
there.
things.
Let's not go there. Just continue our point.
So
So,
Maurice was no different.
has there been a counter research that has been done to show that that
Yes,
body does
yes,
not contain
but it's not. I
salt?
wouldn't say it's counter.
Mm, mm.
I would argue that his so-called analysis had nothing to do with the actual conclusions made by Egyptologists about Ramses, not just by the mummy itself, but also by the
No,
hieroglyphic
no,
information in
no, 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 no,
regards
no.
to.
Oh, okay, I get you now. I get you now. But that is where you are doing that. You are making a big mistake. See, you cannot say that someone who is a scientist goes to make a research, and then after he discovers the result and the sand, he says, "Oh, this must be what the scripture of the Muslims are saying." Like, why should he say so? So he is going to make his conclusion based on a naturalistic conclusion, a natural conclusion, right? This guy has nothing to do with scripture and has nothing to do with religion. It is you now as the one
No,
who
no,
have.
no, 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 no. You're misunderstanding. Maurice was lying. He
So
never did any of this stuff.
you said,
All his claims are fantastical and full of lies that
you
has been
said,
debunked by
you said,
Egyptologists.
you said, those who did the research later, right? They found out these things, right? They found out the sand, the salt, but that was not their conclusion. The conclusion was that is that not what you said?
No, the fact that the body of Ramses had sand and salt content is false. It doesn't.
Okay, so according to them, it doesn't have.
No, according to actual Egyptologists, like Bob Breyer, for example, actually specializes in mummification. There's a
Okay.
guy named Robert Breyer. You can Google him.
There's a
He's
guy called
been
what?
on Breyer's Brier, Bob Breyer. Yeah, you can Google. He's done work for the great courses. He's written books. He's in his 70s now, but
Okay.
he's a popularizer when it comes to ancient Egypt. Like he loves, obviously he's a scholar, but he loves to be like a popularizer of it.
I've seen him.
His particular specialization in Egypt is to do with mummies. Bob Breyer himself had to go out of his way to argue against all the pseudo-Egyptian stuff. For example, you may have
I get your
seen.
point. Hold on.
I'll just quickly give this example. There are some hieroglyphs that potentially show helicopters and modern technology, like as if there were aliens at the time of the Exodus. And Bob Rye has to say, no, this is a palimpsest. It gives the illusion that it's a helicopter, but it's not. Same thing with these radical claims by people who claimed to have done stuff for, on mummies, like Maurice. But even Bob Rye has to debunk that, saying, no, Ramses died at the age of 90. They've even found gold stitches among his organs when they were mummifying his body, because when they were taking out his organs, and because he was a very old and very revered pharaoh, they restitched his internal organs with gold, for example. So these are, you won't find Maurice mention any of these details.
There are so many reasons why what you are saying nobody who takes his faith serious is going to consider all of this. Why? Because see, I understand science. I'm a person of science as well. And you can't tell me that, you see, like all of these bodies that we're talking about, there is no 100% assurance that this body I'm working on right now is the body of a particular pharaoh that lived at the time of Moses. All of these things are what you call scholarly guesswork, the most probable. There's what you call the most probable. It's not as if like we are so sure 100% that this body I'm working on right now.
What made Maurice so sure when he was making arguments?
I'm not appealing to Maurice. You brought up Maurice from the comment section.
Exactly.
And I was
exactly. And he told you not to bring it up.
Yes. I didn't bring up Maurice. Your Muslim guests were bringing up Maurice.
Our position.
He told you to not pay attention to the comments.
And I'm saying I'm going back again.
But then you admitted you have his book.
Yes, I admit I have the book. Yeah, I said so. Yes, that I have the book. So does that mean that?
Yeah. So, before I brought it up, did you believe in Maurice's account?
No. In fact, when you were about to say that, I think I actually made mention of the fact that we have other people who have actually, made a response to his work. I actually know about all of this. So, but the point is, it seems you are so concerned about people's commentary and what have you. Look at the point here. In 7th century Arabia, these people are in the desert.
Let's get back to the premise.
Cut off from the civilization of the world. A man in that era made a claim that a pharaoh of the time of Moses, his body is preserved. Right? Now, yes, I get the point. We don't know where this body is right now. We don't know exactly. We cannot pinpoint exactly that this is the body of the pharaoh. But later on, centuries later, we now discover that the ancient Egyptians actually have a process that they use to preserve the dead body of their royals and their kings. So I am saying, in just this narrative alone, don't you see an amazing?
But the Quran includes his armor, right?
His what?
His what?
His armor.
Leave all of this, because
it's very specific. The Quran says body and armor as a sign for those Israelites who disbelieve in his drowning.
Body and armor? I don't think the Quran says that. The Quran says, Quran chapter 10, verse 92. On this day,
I'll go to Surah 10 and I'll read it out.
Body, that will make you a sign to later generations. So the Quran does not say armor.
1 second. I'm going to bring it up here. Let's see here. Pharaoh.
By the way, Rob, we have to move on. You know, so let's let this be the last thing, and we have to move on, please. There's people
Ah.
in the backstage.
Wait, so are you pushing me back to the backstage?
No, can we just bring
No,
up
like
the verse
let's
before we go?
let's
Bring up the verse. Is
get
it a
this
possible?
done. Yeah, this is the last thing.
Yes, the verse, please.
Okay, isn't it in chapter 10,
Okay,
verse 92?
this is yeah,
Yes.
It says
92,
nothing about
yes.
armor. Come on.
Nothing
It
about
says
armor. It's
nothing
just the
about
body,
armor,
the
man.
body that will be
Nothing
preserved.
about armor.
We rescue
Like,
you with your body so that you may be a sign for those. Oh, then I must have been
exactly,
reading a. One second. I think it was Ibn Kathir that speaks about an armor.
Yeah. Don't. Yeah,
either ways.
that's what I'm
Either
saying. It
ways.
seems as we are reading, you are bringing a commentary into
Let's
the
see.
whole issue as we are reading. So with just the Quran alone, I'm asking you a question. That somebody in 7th century Arabia in a desert, cut off from
This is the
civilization,
last thing we're gonna do with this now.
makes the claim that an ancient king of the Egyptians at the time of Moses, his body is preserved. Centuries later, we find out that the ancient Egyptians actually mummified the dead bodies of their kings and their royals. This is what I'm talking about.
Hey, Faisal, man.
Hey, how are you doing,
You
Rob?
know him? You know him,
Assalamu
Rob?
alaikum, Afwan.
He's the only
Yeah, we've
apart from you, he is also the only other cordial interlocutor.
that's to say a lot more about you than it is to me.
Ooh.
Rob, here's
so-
the thing.
Yeah.
You're talking about drowning. Do you know what evidence you need to collect to basically determine whether someone was drowned? How are you going to prove that the cause of death was drowning?
There's a lot of factors. There's what's it called? I forgot the technical term, but it's basically water that seeps into, say, bone structure. It can also, it depends on, in this case, if you're presuming mummification, you're presuming in which direction was the body washed up. Was it washed up as they're crossing past
Look,
the Sea
Rob.
of
Look, Rob.
Reeds
Look, Rob.
with respect to
Rob,
Israel, and
can
then the
we
Israelites have to
can
give
we
the body
can we push you
back?
to the backstage?
What?
Huh? And bring the other guy up. I think he's been here for a while, and we've been going in circles. You know,
Yeah.
is that cool?
I'll just point something out, Afwan, and then this is like, I know you brought it up a number of times, Rob, and Wassam has responded to you as well on this as well, right? At the end of the day, the key matter here is it's one of the hardest thing to establish whether the cause of death was drowning or not. Basically, it's one of the if you can eliminate all other causes of death.
Okay, how about I
you
just cut to the
basically determine.
chase? How about I cut to the chase for this? Ramses the Great is the pharaoh of the Exodus. That's
Okay.
point number one. Point number two, the Exodus happened in his 7th year of reign, 1272 BC.
According to who?
And according to calibrating Egyptian chronology with the biblical data. And point number three, he
I thought you
dies
said
in
we weren't using the Bible as a
I'm
criterion.
asserting this as a historical argument, which again is a whole other discussion. So I'm just asserting why this also then contradicts the Quran. So point number three is if he dies in 1213 BC at the age of 90, was indeed the pharaoh
Let's
of
get
the
back to the
Exodus,
second thing you said.
then that
What is
also
the
contradicts
historical
the claim
calibration?
that he drowned.
What is the historical calibration?
The historical calibration has to do with aligning Egyptian chronology, the dynasties of Egypt, with what we see in the Exodus account.
Yeah.
The Exodus account of the Bible?
Yes.
Rob, you
I thought we
actually
weren't
believe
using
that there
that.
were a million people in the Exodus. Do you believe that?
No. The Exodus doesn't say that. Scholars, whether it's conservative or critical, do not say that.
So you basically discard the biblical account that there were millions of people.
No, I don't. What even critical scholars, even atheist scholars, will say that the 600,000 there should not be seen as a literal number. It's 600 Alep, which is
So why do you take
600
everything
military
else as
units.
literal? How do you know what's literal and what's not? You know?
Yeah, that's the point, right? Akhwan, if some things can be taken literally and other things are supposed to be
Exactly.
taken
It
figuratively,
has it again.
what are
It's
we
not a
supposed to
picking and
read?
choosing either. It's
It is picking and
there's
choosing,
scholarship
Rob.
that goes into understanding that, for example, Red Sea, right? Red Sea comes from the Septuagint. But when we go down the cognate of Yam Suf to mean Sea of Reeds, now you have to update translations, and now we have to re-emphasize to Christians that there was no Red Sea crossing, but rather a Reed Sea crossing up in
Look,
the Bitter Lake
you
area.
you can basically rewrite the whole history as you want it, but that doesn't make it true, right? If it's a choice between you and God, I'm actually going to choose God, right? We've had this discussion before as well, Rob. I think what when you come on Muslim channels, let's talk about the concept of God, because I feel that when we started digging into that, that's where I found that your concepts are, frankly, they don't conform to either the Christian beliefs nor any Islamic beliefs or anything. You were giving a very henotheistic sort of view of God, that God is just one of many. Every tribe has their own God and that sort of thing. And in that paradigm, how you're interpreting the Bible and what you're saying, again, all of that doesn't make any sense to me. You come across as an atheist interpreting the Bible,
More
wanting
than a
to believe in
Christian.
God. Yeah, wanting to believe in
How
God,
is that
and
possible when I believe in the Apostolic Creed, the Nicene Creed? I believe, like
No, but
1 Corinthians 15, the
every time you
creed
bring an
there,
objection to the Bible, you
that the
say, "Oh this,
Messiah.
oh this, oh this."
No,
Nevertheless, let's Faisal. No, nevertheless, that's a side
how
point.
is
That's a side
appealing to
point. That's a
scholarship and
side
appealing
point,
to what
bro.
happened in history? How does that then default me into atheism? It
That's a side
doesn't.
point, Rob. It's a side point. No, my bad. Okay, that's a side
all
point.
right,
Let Faisal keep saying what he said.
yeah. So at the end of the day, Rob, when you're analyzing the Quran, you want to find a naturalistic explanation for the Quran, and this is all coming from there. Right? We tell you there's a supernatural explanation for the Quran. You basically want us to conform to your paradigm, in which we need to give you a naturalistic explanation for what's written in the Quran. Okay, we're talking about um, uh, miracles of the prophets, and you want us to prove them with naturalistic explanations. I'm sorry if there's
Okay.
this is just
the moon splitting miracle. Do you believe that's yet future, or do you believe that happened at the time of Muhammad?
it happened at the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Okay. Now, do you know why it happened?
Because the kuffar of Makkah, they asked him for a miracle, and he presented it to them.
Yeah, but why did he present it to them?
You tell me. You're
I was
basically
looking
insinuating something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was looking into that, into the philosophy of the time as well, the philosophical notions of what's known as the immutability of nature, that the laws of nature are fixed, they can't be broken, and therefore that's the challenge. Can you break basically the laws of nature? And if the moon were indeed split, then then Muhammad's basically demonstrated that see, the laws of nature are not immutable. They are mutable. Question. What's the historical evidence for the, one part of the moon going to this mountaintop and the other part going to that mountaintop? What's the evidence apart from the Quran for that event?
Hadith.
There's
have
hadith there.
confirming it.
There's a hadith there that confirm to it. You should go watch a video by Sheikh Uthman on this particular topic. He did a bit of research into this. Go take a look at that. But at the end of the day, you're asking me to give you proof of a miracle that happened 1400 years ago, right?
Come on, man.
That's not the miracle that we claim that you need.
You know what?
Is there physical evidence?
Let's turn this back on you,
itself?
Rob. Let's turn this back on you, Rob. Rob, do you believe in the miracles of Jesus? Let's turn the tables here. So can you prove any of them? Can you prove let me see. Can you prove him raising the dead?
Walking on water. The easy one. Let's can you prove Jesus?
Okay, walking on water. Let's use walking on water. Can you prove that?
the only by inference, based on
What does that mean?
what I believe for him to be basically God in flesh, that not only was he crucified, but he rose from the grave.
Yeah, so basically you're
And
saying you
that
cannot.
vindicates his the
Exactly.
situation, the witness,
Look,
and
Rob,
the
let's cut to the chase.
historicity of
You're
the
basically
Let's
gospel.
telling
cut to
us
the
you
chase,
cannot, right?
man.
But
Exactly.
here's the difference, though. The difference is that I can explain these hypernatural miracles because he's the God man. Whereas in your case, you believe that a mere human, Muhammad, through Allah's permission, was able to do something so radical, and that is to split the moon wide enough so that it was a sign. And don't forget, the Hadith and the Quran do not give you how long it transpired. Like, was it a couple of minutes? Was it half an hour of this moon being split? But
Does
even
it
if it
matter?
was just no, it does matter.
It's
Even
irrelevant.
if it was a
doesn't.
few
It's irrelevant,
seconds,
Rob.
it's very relevant, because even if it was a few
Okay,
seconds and you have a positioning of two halves of the moon on two sides of the sky, right? Now don't forget, the moon is many hundreds of thousands of kilometers away from the Earth. So if you already have so many arc degrees worth of moon movement, if you just do simple triangulation math, you're talking about gravitational disturbances so intense,
Rob,
Look,
we're going
Rob.
like
come
the whole
on.
thing is impossible.
Okay, Rob, I want you
And
to
you need
stop there.
physical evidence
But
on the
Rob,
moon as a telltale sign that something happened
stop,
with it
stop,
for it to be
stop.
rejoined.
Okay,
Rob,
Rob,
come on,
stop, my
Rob.
friend. It like when you're
Don't
look,
don't
you're
say come
going into
on.
these details. You're going into the details.
I'm
Look,
giving critical pushback.
Rob, this is
Hey,
not
look what
critical
Diaper
pushback.
said.
This is not critical pushback.
You
all right?
nailed it, Rob. Jesus is Lord. Crazy.
So this is not critical pushback. This is basically you're asking for a physical explanation for a metaphysical event. It did not happen for you. When those miracles happened, therefore that time, that place, for those people, that event is not what we Muslims come to you and say, you have to believe in Muhammad, peace be upon him, because he split the moon. No Muslim is ever coming to you and saying that. What we're telling you is that his miracle is right here in front of you, that you can analyze, and you can basically say, okay, the Quran is a miraculous book. And then if you come to the conclusion that the Quran is a miraculous book, then you basically accept it. Why would you come to that
Exactly,
conclusion?
man.
Because it's divine revelation. And
Is
We
again,
have
there
external
any
evidence. We have
is there, apart from the Quran, is there any
wait,
evidence on the
Rob,
moon itself to
wait,
show that something significant happened to it?
Rob, here's the deal.
Rob. It's just
Right.
like us saying, apart from the Bible, what's the evidence that Jesus walked on the water? What's the evidence for that?
Or Moses parted the sea.
The difference
Or
again,
Moses parted the
the whole
sea.
walking on the water, there's no trace of it left, because any body of water it's just a body of water. At least with the moon, you have an object in the night sky. Which part of the moon was literally ripped apart and rejoined? But don't forget, Muslims try and argue. See,
Rob,
there's the line that showcases there.
I
It must have been
don't care.
split in that.
I don't care
in
about
that.
the line or anything, right? Allah, with his power, he can rip the moon apart and join it together as if it was not even ripped apart.
By the way, Rob, do you believe that? Do you believe Allah can do
Do you
that?
believe God can do that?
Do you
or
believe
not?
God Almighty can do that?
No, because
You don't
the
believe God
of
can
the
do that?
Yeah, no, because the God of the Bible says that he limits himself to the laws of nature. He literally says, "I made a covenant."
But
that
in the
laws of
Bible,
nature
it says
cannot-
that I don't know
It
who it was,
literally
but the
says the
sun
laws of
stopped in
nature.
the middle of the day.
No, it doesn't say that either.
And
It
this
doesn't
is
say
where
that?
I think,
No.
and this is where I think, Rob, we need to have this discussion, because your concept of God is very warped. It's not. It does not
It's
conform
not.
to the
It's not.
Christian concept.
Anyway, I'll
It does
pull it
not
up.
conform to the Muslim concept, right? So for me, I think that's the discussion that maybe when you come to a Muslim channel, talk about that, and then maybe you can we can segue into other discussions, because if you don't even believe that God has the capability to perform miracles for his prophets, then definitely this, we cannot move past it, because all of your points that you bring forth are presupposing naturalism, and that's not the paradigm that we work with. So if you're going to come to me and say Faisal, give me a natural explanation of why uh, uh, thoughts or why 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, right? It's not a natural, it's a concept. It's not a natural explanation. So there has to be differences between
rational. Sorry, Faisal, I'm not dismissing what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm just letting Rational know. In the private chat, do you see my link, the Brill.com paper?
Sure.
That I just linked?
What is that
I'll put
supposed
it
to
up.
be?
So it's a 2020
By
study.
the way, while you're
on-
doing that, let me read the passage to you, Rob. It says, "And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies." So the sun
Okay.
stood still in the midst of the
So
heaven
can
and did
you-
not go down for about a whole day. This is Joshua
Yes.
10:13.
Yes. So can you click on that link and screen share it for
Okay.
everyone to see? Read
So-
the
But
the
do what I
abstract is
said
very
first.
short. It's a study based on the passage. So there was a 2017 study that
okay.
was published in Nature by
Mhm.
Colin Humphreys and another physicist. So these were scientists dealing with the study, but this
But do you
particular
agree with
study-
the passage? Do you believe the
I
sun
agree
stopped
with
in
the
the middle of the day?
passage. I agree with the
Then
passage.
why did you deny it
but
when I brought it up?
No, I'm not denying the passage. The passage has everything to do with ancient Near Eastern polemics. Because don't forget, the same passage speaks about the book of Jasher, that it comes from. It also speaks about how the sun's located in the Ajalon Valley. It also says that the moon is
Are you saying
also
it's not
located-
historical?
I'm saying the philological underpinnings of the passage have everything to do with what's called Mesopotamian omen texts. It has nothing to do with the actual physical sun in the night sky or or during the daytime halting. It's to do with the deities Shemesh and Sin, the sun and the moon deities,
Yep.
with respect to the possibility that this is talking about a solar eclipse. And
Yeah,
so if you
Rob-
read, just for the
Rob,
sake of transparency, read the very
so
short
first of all,
abstract in the link.
I cannot.
I've
This is not
seen the
me
abstract, but
Right.
what
I
does it
cannot
prove?
download it. I don't
Come on,
have
man.
access to
So-
it. All right.
So read,
An
but read
article
what the
doesn't
abstract
prove-
says. It's very short.
Yeah, but what is that? What is the article? What basis
Because
does the
this is
article have? Like,
scholarship. This is by evangelical Christians.
evangelical Christians, you see?
Yes.
Not New Testament scholars, evangelical Christians. Come on, Rob.
Yeah, no, but either way, Rob, what sorry, are you here? Okay. So either way,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, right, you're presupposing a naturalistic cause for this. You're presuming that there
Yeah.
has to be a naturalistic explanation, and that
I'll
trumps
keep my
any.
camera off.
That's
just for
fine.
the sake. Yeah.
No
And
problem,
that
Rob.
trumps any metaphysical explanation, right? We're denying that presupposition that you're doing because.
But I'm interested in the perspicuity of the original context. So in other words, what did Joshua mean for the ancient author? What did Joshua 10 mean for the ancient author and audience? So as the since you're not reading the abstract, I'll read it. It
Go ahead.
says,
No, it's not
This
about
paper-
reading it. You said it's by evangelical Christians, not New
yes.
Testament.
And don't forget,
scholars.
the charge here is that I'm the
No,
atheist.
sorry, not Old Testament scholars. Hey, bro, we said that was a side point, bro. Why you bringing
No.
that back up?
No, I'm not having a go at you. I'm saying
Okay.
the charge was that I'm the one that's making up my own interpretation. I'm appealing to cutting
You're
edge
just trying to
scholarship.
say that.
I'm appealing to peer review and scholarship. I'm not the one making up
Rob,
random
Are
interpretations.
evangelical Christians? Can you say evangelical Christians are they? How do I say? Is that scholarship work by evangelical Christians? Really?
Yes, because Brill is no slouch publication. Brill is top tier level scholarship.
Well, I don't know, bro. So I wouldn't push back
Yeah,
too much on that.
So anyway, at the end of the day, whatever scholarship you're bringing, if it presupposes naturalism, right? I fail to see what the reason is why I should accept that for what it is. If it's going to reject the very notion that we're supposed to be questioning whether there is a God, and if all of this happened because of God's because of God determining how the world should be, how things should happen in the world, then I am questioning why you're even bringing that to us. We're looking at things in different paradigm, and
Well,
that's what I'm questioning with you, because that's not an objective view, Rob. It's already
Faisal,
yeah.
you opened the link, didn't you?
Yeah, I opened the link.
Okay,
If you
is
want
there
me
a
to read it,
date?
I'll read it. I'll
Okay,
read it out
it.
for you.
Because
Okay.
don't forget, this is also connected ironically to the Exodus.
Okay, so
What
this is
specific
an
date did they give you?
online publication dated 17th January 2020. The miracle of the sun and moon in Joshua 10 is a solar eclipse. The abstract, or basically the summary of that, was this paper offers an interpretation of the astronomical phenomenon described in Josh 10, 12 to 13 as an annual solar eclipse. According to NASA data, this
Faisal.
type of
Sorry,
yeah.
Faisal.
Can you hear me?
I don't think Abdulmalik is here, and I'm about to go do something, maybe like 10 minutes. So you're in charge, bro.
Okay,
yeah.
No worries. Where was I? This type of eclipse was seen in the skies of central Israel, where the ancient city...
You have to read from according to NASA.
Okay, according to NASA data, this type of eclipse was seen in the skies of central Israel, where the ancient city of Gibeon was located, on October 30th, 1207 BCE. Philological analysis of both Joshua 10 and Habakkuk 3 shows, am I saying it right? Habakkuk 3 shows that the phenomenon is described using polysemic verbs in poetic style, describing the darkening of the sun by the moon is standing in front of it. All right, so that's their interpretation. And if that's their interpretation,
yeah, but what date specifically was given there?
1207 BCE, October 30th.
Now when did the Exodus happen according to late date theorists?
When was
because
it?
Don't forget, Joshua happens just after they're entering the promised land, right? Under Joshua. So the Merneptah Stela dates to around 1205 BCE. This matches very well with the late date view of the Exodus. In other words, 1272 BCE is the Exodus. 40 years later, and you just count the generations, 40, 40, 40. So Joshua 10 aligns beautifully then with Ramses II as being the Exodus pharaoh.
So you're basically taking this as the date and you're doing your calculation back. Is that what you're trying to say?
Not me, the scholars.
Okay, fine. Whatever scholars are doing, to me it doesn't matter.
And by the way, that chronology is a side
Rob,
issue as well, because the point of this article is to say, what is the so-called halting language? Oh, in Ugaritic and in Akkadian sources, this is nothing but solar eclipse imagery. So yeah, it has nothing to do with that the sun actually halted in the sky and so on.
Look, Rob, that's the thing. You're presupposing that there has to be a naturalistic explanation, and that's why you're buying into this. These scholars are presupposing that there must be a naturalistic explanation for each and every one of the events that are described in the Bible, and they're on that presupposition, they're putting forth the explanation that you're reading, and you're concurring with them because you've also presupposed naturalism. They've also presupposed naturalism. They've come with a naturalistic conclusion. You're coming to a naturalistic conclusion. I am questioning this presupposition here. Why are you saying that there has to be a naturalistic explanation for it? All right, that's what I'm questioning from you, because this idea that God cannot do that, or there has to be some other explanation which is more rational than this explanation which is being given, is what I'm trying to question from you. Are you still here?
One second.
Sure.
Okay. I can turn my camera on. Okay. I heard what you said. I wasn't ignoring what you're saying. But that word, naturalistic explanation, again, it just blows my mind that you go in that direction. Do you see the second link I just put it in the private chat?
Okay, I'll pick it up.
How does this lead to a naturalistic explanation? Notice, it's in the astronomy geophysics volume, with respect to, it's an Oxford academic work, Colin Humphreys and Graham Waddington. It's a work 3 years before the Brill paper, 2017 work. Notice the title, Solar Eclipse of 1207 BC helps to date the what? The pharaohs. So, for you to say it's a naturalist explanation is not the point of any of the argumentations made by these papers. That's your reaction because you have the assumption that the sun halted. What if your interpretation that the sun halted is false? What if that's a false interpretation of the passage? What if the passage never speaks about a sun halting ever? And that's your faulty interpretation of the passage. Instead, what if the passage, as they're trying to understand it, is saying that no, this is ancient Near Eastern polemical wordplay and philology stuff going on. So in other words, we have to faithfully understand what the text is trying to say in its original context to then help us better understand chronologically when the account happened. Oh, it seems to align with the solar eclipse of October in 1207 BC. Oh, awesome. That helps us now calibrate the dating of the pharaohs. And guess what? Pharaoh happens to be the pharaoh that they end up with, according to this, Ramses the Great.
Okay,
Which then again contradicts the Quran because Ramses wasn't drowned; he died at the age of 90.
Again, I asked you that question before, and then we can discuss that some other time. Like, what is the proof for drowning? How would you establish that somebody drowned? We can have that discussion separately because you're claiming that Ramses wasn't drowned because your claim is based on some authority that these Egyptologists are coming to the conclusion that Ramses didn't drown. But the point that I'm questioning here is how would you even establish in this day and age, after you've found a mummy, whether or not the cause of death for the mummy was drowning or something else? Like I said, if you look for the reasons for on how coroners come to the conclusion that the cause of death is drowning, all right, they have to eliminate every other possibility. Okay, so if let's say if a pufferfish, let's say, pricked him, I'm just putting it out there, he could have died from there could have been poison in his system, right? Today, if a coroner sees that, they will conclude that he died from poisoning. That's more likely to be a cause of death than drowning, because drowning is sort of after all the other causes of death are have been eliminated, then you basically determine, okay, this is drowning. So you don't the whole notion that he didn't drown, you don't have any proof for that. Okay, what we are saying is in our situation, in our position, we're being given revelation that this happened, he was drowned. How would we know that this revelation is true? What's the prophecy in it? That his body would be preserved. Okay, at the time of the prophet, peace be upon him, nobody in their right mind would basically agree to the idea that the body of the pharaohs would be preserved. Okay, that's not a statement any individual would be making if they're in their right minds. Okay, is there any similar statement in the Bible that you can refer to?
The Bible is silent when it comes to
Yeah, exactly.
the pharaoh
But the Quran is
specifically.
making
But
a
the
claim
Quran's very
here.
explicit.
The
Okay?
Quran is very explicit in making a claim here that his
Right.
body was preserved, and we can see that his body is
Well,
preserved.
not
That
just
was a
preserved.
prophecy.
This language that water's reaching up, we know it's drowning language. It's like the book of Jonah, where even Jonah says the seaweeds are coming up to my throat, and I'm now, drowning. Basically, it's drowning language. You don't see this in the Bible. Rather, you see the Bible's describing the Pharaoh and his forces as being swatted like a fly. It uses that specific Hebrew term.
So, Rob, what's the point?
The point. Okay, so the point
So,
then.
remember what I'm talking about. Can we
No,
actually
you can
discuss
keep
that?
going. Yeah.
Yeah. So remember what I'm pointing out to you here is there proof that he was not drowned? Because, like I said, for a coroner to do that in today's age for a body that has just been pulled out of the water, they have to eliminate every other possibility before they can conclude drowning was the cause of death. You're assuming that that would have been possible for a body that was taken out of water 3,500 or so years ago, and then it was mummified, and you feel that the Egyptologists would be able to make a conclusion using that body that the cause of death is drowning?
Yeah, so Bob Breyer, who specializes in mummification, he's in his 70s now, thereabouts, or maybe early 80s. He has extensively, one of his favorite mummies happens to be Ramses the Great. His team, and many other Egyptologists. I know one, I'm friends with one, David Falk, who specializes in furniture in ancient Egypt. He's Christian.
Does he
I've
believe
even
in
asked
God,
him.
or is he an individual who presupposes
No,
naturalistic causes?
no. He's a. In fact, he would definitely be more conservative than me when it comes to supernatural stuff.
Okay.
And since he's a
Rob,
specialist,
is it true you don't
he
believe in
has a
miracles?
YouTube channel called Ancient Egypt and the Bible. So he specializes in Egyptology, but he's also a biblical scholar. And I've actually asked him specifically, what's the range of pharaohs that would fit the description of the Quran? He says the consensus is Ramses II. Now, if he dies at the age of 90, then, and if the Exodus happens in 1272 BC and he dies in 1213 BC, there is your big disconnect. He dies in 1213, which is not 1272. 1272 is when he's still a very young pharaoh. Bob Breyer makes the same argument. Bob Breyer, in fact, goes out of his way to educate people
Rob.
into the mummy, what the mummy is,
Okay,
like
Rob,
the
I
gold
understand
threads and
your
all
point.
sorts of other things. That's very interesting.
Look, I understand your point. If tomorrow somebody comes and produces some evidence that had been missed out, which basically puts a date of this eclipse 150 years before, let's say. I'm just throwing it out there, right? Would you revise your opinion?
Of course.
That's the point. That's my point. You're going with guesswork. That's what all history is about. You're guessing at what happened, when it happened, who it happened to, right? And we're not dealing with that. We're dealing with revelation.
At the same
here.
time, that's not
Revelation,
how these papers are designed or how they work.
I
Because
get it,
the fact
Rob,
that
again,
it's published is because of a lot of evidence for what's already laid out.
No,
you're talking about a radical readjustment of dates.
Look, Rob, the fact that it's published is because this person was able to convince the people who were reading it that he has come up with something which, based on the evidence that he's analyzed, comes to the conclusion that he's made, and these people agreed to it. That's it. These these scientific journals, they're not supposed to be the letter of the law or truth as it is. It's not 2 + 2 = 4, right?
Now,
this is not
with
what
respect
this
to
is.
the mummy of Ramses, what do the scientists, with the best estimation, what do they actually say is the cause of his death?
Go ahead, tell me.
So, people like Bob Breyer will argue that there's a massive tooth infection that transpired at the age of 90 with a hunchback.
Okay. Okay. Is there more, or that was?
No, sorry, no, it's just there's noise in the background. So,
okay.
For the sake of,
yeah.
But that's what he, for example, would say. In other words, none of them in any of their possible explanations for death, drowning is not part of any of the discussions from Amenhotep II to Ramses the Great.
Like I said, if there's any other explanation outside of drowning, they'll give that explanation, and not drowning would be the explanation. Okay,
no,
look it up.
They don't even have drowning as a even. They're not even thinking of the Quran. They're not saying, "Oh, because the Quran says drowning, therefore we have to ignore." They're not trying to oppose the Quran. They're not They don't
doesn't
have in
matter to
mind,
them.
oh, we have to hide away from the Quran. The
Rob,
point
it
is,
doesn't matter to them. It
the
doesn't matter
point
to
is,
them what the
if
Quran
there
says.
was an Egyptologist that said drowning, you bet that not only would I have to agree with that, but Muslims would be like the whole Maurice situation. Since Maurice made the claim, see, and immediately everyone bought at hook, line, and sinker without realizing that he was lying. He was making it up.
Okay. If that's your point, fine. I can agree with you that maybe Maurice didn't know, and he shouldn't have made that conclusion without.
Not that he didn't know.
proper
He actually didn't even work on the mummy.
Fine.
The whole thing was a big fabrication.
That's fine. Okay. But at the end of the day, right, the reality of the situation for me is still what has been revealed in the Quran, right? It doesn't matter what your scientists, what type of guesswork your scientists are doing, because that's all this is. None of these people were actual witnesses to the events that happened. If you can actually bring me an actual witness to the events, then maybe we can have a different conversation about it, right? What you're bringing me is people living today looking at whatever scraps of evidence that they can come up with to conclude on something which is at best guesswork. And that's what we're saying. If you're coming to us with a historical claim, I'm okay to give you everything as a historical claim, but that's not a proof against Islam. Sorry, Rob. That's really where I feel that you're missing the argument against Muslims.
What's your understanding of say Dhul Qarnayn?
Okay.
Surah 18. Who is he to you?
Why does it matter?
Look, Rob. We've been on this for I think 2 hours.
Right?
Wait.
Yeah.
Look, Faisal. Look.
The reason why I'm going.
We've been on this for 2 hours.
The reason why I'm asking these questions is because I like Faisal. Faisal is actually very cordial.
So Rob, here's the thing.
I can get along with
him. Exchange.
Brother Muba, this is his channel. Let's follow what rules he set for us, right?
Yeah, sure.
If we need to have this conversation, we can jump on some other time. But here's the deal. At the end of the day,
I'm really tired, and there's someone in the backstage, and I want to end with him. So no heart of
okay. Faisal, please understand that I do love talking with you. Like you're awesome. I think.
What about me?
Are you Indian in background? Because probably that's why we can sort of like.
By the way, I don't know if Brother Muba, you know this, that Rob is actually ethnically Indian.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
And Faisal, are you Indian yourself?
Yes, ethnically Indian, but that's not the reason why.
So that's why we can.
I'm just trying to.
We can share biryani together, right? So.
Yeah, maybe, but I can bet that I can make better biryani than you. Right?
Before I go, Faisal, I would like. Honestly, like it is I suppose a request, but I know that Fawad, I think his name is, doesn't want me on Dots Connected or any other platform. But I would love for you, if it's just you and me, and we can hash out a nice, good 3-4 hour discussion. Let's just do it. Like, feel free to message me, email me.
So that's fine. That's fine, Rob. The only thing I would say is if we have a situation where things are toxic or someone else jumps on and they're being disrespectful to a prophet and anything like that, or being disrespectful to Allah, right? That's a line that I would have to draw. So as long as it's a cordial discussion, generally speaking, you're especially when you're having this conversation, it's not like that. I also want to say that a lot of times discussions with you, they tend to go on lots of tangents. So we gotta make sure that we're sticking to some sort of a core topic if we're gonna have this discussion. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense, right? That we keep jumping from topic to topic. All right. Robert, you're on mute, so if you were saying anything...
Yep.
Okay.
No, that's basically it. Just nothing else to say. And if you want that discussion, just email me.
Yeah, here it is. My email is there. Just reach out to me. That's fine. I'm open to having that discussion. I think at the end of the day, I get it. We can disagree, but as long as you understand that
Yeah.
our paradigm is drastically different from what you're trying to point out to us, and the arguments that you're bringing up, they don't go well with Muslims, because and there's a reason why it's frustrating.
And okay,
Yeah.
and here's my email.
Sure.
Maybe it'll be
All
easier
right,
if
guys.
you email me directly too. Yep. All right.
Faisal, will you still be around?
Rational Muslim,
Talk to
thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, I'll stay around for a while.
All right,
I do
Rob.
have to
I hope
go.
you think I'm a good guy too, Rob.
I do. I do.
All right, man. Cheers, man.
All right.
Cheers. Let me bring Chris up so you can just. I'll put you down now.